Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Sex, Lies, and Consciousness with your luscious hostess, May Vu, broadcasting live every Monday at 12 noon Pacific Time.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. This is May. Today, I have two great guests. I'm mixing it up a little. I am doing two topics in one show. So the first half of the hour, we will be talking to Eric about boundaries, sex and boundaries. And then on the second half of the show, my friend Annie is going to talk about her views on marriage. She's of Indian descent, and of course, you know, she is expected to marry years ago. And I've been talking to her a lot about where she is with marriages and all that stuff. And to me, her perspective on marriages seems to be like the sameness of all the single women out there that I've met. So I wanted her to come on the show and just bounce around some stuff with us. So, and they both will join in on both conversations, but mostly we'll let Eric lead. Eric, welcome to the show, honey.
Hello, welcome. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So, Eric, you know, until I talked to you, I never really thought about boundaries and sex. And then when you talk about all the boundaries that you have considered, I just thought, oh my God, that's so huge. Do you want to just like say some stuff about where you are with this subject, and then we'll dive in?
Yeah, I would love to. I actually kind of want to start out by saying I feel a little bit like a hypocrite even talking about it. Because on one level, when I was telling my friends I was going to be doing this, I was like, me doing the talk on boundaries? So anyway, I'm finding that a couple months ago I was in a really bad accident, and I was bedded up for a couple months. And then I really had an opportunity to kind of really explore myself and where I was, how I was showing up in the world, and kind of what led to my accident. And I started to realize that, wow, there's a lot of areas in my life where I'm not very conscious of my personal boundaries. And that led me to think about my sexual boundaries and stuff like that. And then into the context of your radio show, Sex, Lies, and Consciousness, I started to become a lot more conscious about the lies that I've been telling myself about my sexual boundaries and my personal boundaries, really.
Wow.
And it's been quite a discovery. Not always pleasant for sure, but definitely enlightening.
Well, before we dive in, I just want to acknowledge that part first. You know, what you just said about your reaction, like, well, I should be the last person to talk about boundaries on this show. Well, that's why I love having you on this show, because my show is not about talking to experts and how, 10 rules on honoring your sexual boundaries, blah, blah, blah. I find those things very boring. I love talking to normal, everyday people like me, where we're struggling with stuff, or we're paying attention to our own process and our own learnings about sex, relationships, and lies and consciousness and all that good stuff. So you are the perfect person to be on this show talking about boundaries. And I really appreciate you sharing your personal experience with that. It just makes it very real.
Yeah, and it's actually funny because you even saying that reminds me of like just having our boundaries or honoring our boundaries, and both our personal boundaries, or at least when I'm honoring my personal boundaries and my sexual boundaries.
Yeah.
I find a lot of times it's really messy. It's not really clean. Oftentimes I'm stepping on others' feet, or they're stepping on my feet. And
yeah.
I really catch myself and honor that.
Well, I love it. So as I was thinking about the shows, I did see a string of words that came with the show, so you just gave me the first word. It's like a string of pearls or something. It's like boundaries are messy. Like sex is messy. The act of sex is messy, and I think getting to sex is messy, and in our relationship is messy. And so setting up boundaries and honoring the boundaries and then messing up the boundaries, your own and others, and being conscious or unconscious about it, it's all just so messy.
Yeah, a lot. And I mean, it's been funny just being invited to this talk show and then talking to people about boundaries, and how many people don't even really know what that means for themselves.
Yeah.
I'm finding, for myself included, like, shit, what does that mean?
So let's start there. What does that mean?
I'm finding it's really kind of the guidelines and the rules that are limits that I place on the experiences that I want to have to create the reality or the experiences that I do want.
So boundaries are guidelines and rules to make it safe for me to play, whether it's playing with you sexually or playing with you in a relationship or being in relationship with somebody.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I'm discovering about them.
And
They're kind of the structure, the guidelines to kind of creating the life that we want for ourselves, or the experiences that we want to have.
So it can go from all the way from just this incident, you and me, the guideline and the rules, all the way to a lifetime commitment and a lifetime experience of like, how do we set up our boundaries and structure and rules so that we can play? And already, see, I can feel the complication of that.
It's super complicated. Because what my boundaries may be now in relationship to someone or to a sexual experience may be totally different from 5 minutes from now.
Let me just bring in Annie to make room for Annie. Annie, do you want to say anything about boundaries so far? What are you thinking?
Well, it's interesting that you say that you think about it's interesting that you say that you think about boundaries, because for me it's sort of like any event or any incident or any task it's like if I'm imagining myself going into a room, I'm always very aware of what the outline of that room is, and my first instinct is also to find out what's your back door. For me, going into anything, it's very clear for me in my head. These are the rules of operation. Does that make sense?
It does. But for you, it almost sounds like there's the rules of operation and there's also the back door, and here's how you escape from it.
Oh, any situation, I think the first thing I think about before even getting into the situation is what's the exit plan. Like first thing on my list.
And so let's use that with sex. So like you're about to have sex with a guy. Do you think about an exit plan?
Oh yeah, always.
Like how? Like give us a snapshot of what's in your brain.
Well, let's say you start off you got to the date and you start off and it's your first date, so you're just testing the water, and and throughout the course of the evening it's all going well, and then at that very last, what should we say, the goodnight kiss, when you're trying to determine yes or no, because up till that point you're not very sure. And a friend of mine always told me this, like women always have the upper hand because women always know if they're going to have sex tonight or not. Men don't have that kind of, I'm talking about a male-female relationship, but they don't know if they're going to get sex that night or not. But women know, yes, I'm going to sleep with this guy. No, I'm not going to sleep with this guy.
Yeah.
Up till that very point in the evening, you've not still made up your mind. So there's always, I don't know, it's default exit, like, oh, another night, or I don't know. I can think of.
So it sounds to me like women have an extra boundary. Like it sounds to me like just from that sexual thing, it sounds like women are the gatekeeper and men are the gate climber. Like, is that true, Eric? Like you feel the boundary and you're gonna climb over that boundary, and women are like hold on to that boundary as strong as you can, or we're gonna open the gate.
I definitely think of as a man, as a guy, it's definitely like, when we're come across a challenge or an obstacle, we're kind of taught to defeat it, tear it down, go through it. So I think, yeah, and it kind of brings up that kind of idea to me. Yeah, there have been times where I hate to admit it, but I try to convince someone that it's a good thing to have sex with me that night, or kind of, this is why you might want to do it. And then if I'm not in the mood, I can kind of convince them why I'm not, why it might not be a good idea to do this. I don't know where I'm going with that, but it's like yes and no.
Well, it makes me want to hear how you try to convince a woman to have sex with you. Like, what do you say, Eric? It's like, come on.
I don't know if I'm ready to admit that much.
You must.
I can tell you some of the lines that have come across. It'd be like, "Oh, baby, come on, you know the night is good. It's a good moment. Let's go with the flow." So they've convinced every argument saying this is good for you and me. So yeah, that was one. Live for the moment. And I love the bit where they will come up and they'll tell you. They'll actually change. Not change, but they sort of challenge your perception, saying, "Oh, you're not being experimental. You need to live for the moment." You know, they kind of push your thought process, so you actually second guess yourself a bit. No offense, Eric. No offense, Eric, because this is just my common statement.
I'm not offended at all, and I'm glad you're being honest about it, because that's been one of the kind of hard things about becoming aware of my boundaries, is looking at how I've violated other people's boundaries, and that's not pleasant either. That hurts, actually.
So go there, Eric. What are some ways that you can violate somebody's boundaries? Because you know what, I know this is uncomfortable to share, but it's universal. We all do it. You know, women do it in our own ways, and men do it in their own ways. And a lot of times we're so unconscious about it. So I think it would be great if we could capture some of those snippets there.
Snippets as far as like how I violate.
Yeah.
Boundaries may be violated.
How you went about violating somebody's boundaries.
I think it's it's funny because too, I think it happens on different levels, right? Different degrees of intimacy that I have in a relationship. Some of them can be, like, you know, I'm getting kind of stuck on this one. How I've done it. I've tried to pressure people into having sex through, trying to convince them that it's a good thing, live in the moment, be free and spirited and all that stuff. And I would say that on that level too, that's where my being unconscious of boundaries is. I've always had this notion of like, boundaries are bad, rules are bad. To live free and live in the moment, that's what one's supposed to do. And then then coming to realize, well, yes and no. It's one thing to have a free spirit and want to have a good time, but it's also another thing to, honor people's boundaries and respect those boundaries.
Well, let's turn that a little bit too. It's like, I know too that I'm sure you have encountered lots of boundaries that women threw up at you. Like, no, don't touch me here, don't touch me there, all that stuff, right? I mean, I'm assuming that.
Sure.
So what's that like for you to receive those boundaries and pushback from us?
One, it depends. Sometimes I think the challenge too is sometimes defining are they really sincere? Like what, their body language may be saying more, but yet they're saying no, hold back. Then there comes that, oh, I'm holding back, but they're going, no, I actually want more. So there's even the complication of that, when does no mean no, and when does stop mean stop? It's that whole thing too. No, but I mean yes. It's complicated.
Could I add something that actually, Eric, I don't think you should feel. I don't think there should be any adult, any situation. The adult or the individual always has a choice. So if somebody didn't want to be in that position, they could tell you very clearly they don't want to be in that position. If they're unclear in their message, then it's not entirely one party's misunderstanding of the situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's one thing of like, violating boundaries on a very simple level, and then there's, the hardcore violating someone's boundaries that I would never cross, and I have that limitations. But then there's the more subtle ones that can be really easily crossed without even knowing it.
Yeah.
I can feel the tenseness of this conversation. It's kind of like we haven't like really dropped into it yet, because I'm making up the story that this is really hard to talk about because you're at risk of sounding like a pervert or what are some of the unflattering terms that we have out there?
I get the dirty old man a lot. I like that one.
The dirty old man? You're not even old yet, but you get the dirty old man a lot.
Well, a lot of what Eric is sharing, a lot of my guys, a lot of what Eric is sharing, a lot of my guy friends have constantly said. It's the same sentiment. They find it difficult to read the messages, and then if they read the wrong thing and they went a little forward, then they've suddenly become a darker character. So it's a very delicate balance. I think guys have it a little hard on that
Exactly.
angle.
Let's talk about sexual boundaries. Like, what are some sexual boundaries do you have?
Definitely one is to not have sex with somebody if they sincerely don't want to have sex and they say no. Just stop. Don't pressure them and stuff like that.
What's your own sexual boundaries?
My own sexual boundaries? I'm discovering that I really don't have that many.
Like what? Like what are some place that you thought you had a boundary on and then you discovered that I don't have that?
Wow. I'm at one area I'll come out, and I can't believe I'm even going to come out and say this out loud.
Then make sure you say it loud so they can hear you well.
Yeah, it's like for years and years and years, I had this notion of having sex with somebody of the same sex is like pure no way. How could that ever possibly happen? And then one night after receiving oral sex from a guy, I was like, hey, that ain't all that bad. It's like, it's like I discovered this whole other reality. Previous to that, I was like, no way in hell would I ever do this. And then I discovered that there was a whole belief system attached to that decision that no longer suited me anymore. And it really helped me grow and understand people in a different way. Now, some of my very best friends are gay people. Prior to that, I was not able to comfortably hang out with gay people.
Wow. So did you get to have sex with that man too, or just being blown by him?
Just blown by him. I have had sex with the man since then.
Yeah?
I've explored a couple times, like 3 times I've explored that.
And what did that do to your internal system? Because I mean, I have a very similar story, and I'll share mine too. But I want to get yours first. It's like, what's that like for you to like, oh my God, really penetrate through that whole sexual boundaries of men don't have sex with men unless you're gay, and then there's all sorts of crappy belief around that that is so not right, but we hold so dearly to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that touches on one of the big things. It's like, where do our boundaries or our notions of sexual boundaries or personal boundaries come from? And I think it's really brought about through our upbringing, through our parents, our friends, religious or spiritual community, social pressure. And I think as I've discovered kind of pushing my boundaries in every area of my life, that oftentimes a lot of these kind of beliefs, if you will, thoughts that I've held on to no longer really have value anymore. As I start to push them and explore them and recognize that, oh, wow, there's a whole other world that exists outside the world that I once thought existed. And there's been a huge freedom in that, I think.
Yeah.
I feel a lot more communion with the world, with people of the world as I expand my boundaries.
Yeah, totally. I get it.
I'm not shutting myself off to this whole other world that exists. And I think that's the thing that we often forget. I know I often forget, is that by setting boundaries, I'm closing out a whole other part of the world that exists. And a whole other level of opportunity that I might not ever really be able to know or explore.
Yeah, and for me, just to highlight that point, it's like at first when I don't push past my boundaries, I think it's an unsafe world out there and I don't want to let that into me. But once I push past that boundaries and discover more access to myself, I realized that, wow, the boundaries were only keeping me away from joy and love rather than protecting me, rather than, it didn't do me good. It actually did me harm than good. But that was such like, oh my God, like, talk about busting up lies in my head. I was just kind of like, holy shit, I actually was doing myself damage by separating myself from those kind of people, thinking that they're bad and wrong and I had to protect myself from them. But when I open myself up to them and come close and connect to them deeper, it's like so much got to be let into me.
Yeah, exactly. Not just physically either.
Exactly. Yeah. No pun intended and pun intended all at the same time.
Exactly.
Do you want, Annie? Do you want to share any of your sexual boundaries that you've put past?
I was trying to think if there. I don't think I've been that experimental. It's been very vanilla choices. So I don't think I've pushed it. I don't think I've even touched on even pushing the boundaries like right now. So yeah.
Well, for you to be on this conversation talking about it publicly, about yourself publicly, is pushing past the boundary, isn't it?
Oh yeah, in that it's so funny because I guess as we've morphed into our conversations, like this no longer is a mind block. So mentally, probably not. Physically might be another topic, but mentally, no. Yeah. Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll share one. I mean, like, you guys pick. Which one do you want me to talk about? When I push past the anal part, or the sex with a different species other than men?
Which one was your most enjoyable one? Let's go with that one.
Or most challenging one.
Wow.
Push the boundaries. Push the boundaries here today.
They're both enjoyable and they're both amazing. Well, God,
Which one was more challenging for you, Jay?
You know what's going on in my mind is which one is cleaner to talk about. So I'll talk about the cleaner one. The other one, I hit up against my own taboo. I'm like, oh, I don't want to make people go, ew, disgusting, Hey,
I came out of the closet. You can come out of the closet.
Well, I'll tell you. Okay, I'll do the riskier one for me then. The riskier one for me was this one time when I played with this man who taught me how to fist his ass. And I had such a huge physical boundaries around playing with people's ass. I'm like, okay, as far as I could go is they can play with mine, but I don't want to touch anybody's ass, And it's like, and don't make me go in that deep, dark hole, the abyss of it all. So I was like, no. In my head, of course, on the outside, I was all like cool and sexy, I was like, okay, yeah, well, I've never gone there, but you can tell me, inside I'm like, oh God, I hope he pooped already. Oh God, I'm not going to encounter anything.
I think you forgot to say that this may be a R-rated program.
Hey, you know what? I think my shows are just way too mild. I got to make it more vibrant for people to increase the. No, I'm just kidding. We have a lot of good listeners all over the world, and I think it's important. It was so amazing. I never thought that I would. I didn't get off of it. Like, it didn't excite me, or like it didn't turn me on, but it turned my head on. I was like, oh my God, and I swear it was so good because I was able to put my whole fist inside his ass and then my arm in it, like all the way almost up to the elbow. Meanwhile, as that's happening, I'm all like that whole Star Trek line of travel where no man has gone before. I was all like, woo, traveling where no man has gone before. Oh.
I have a very interesting visual in my head right now.
Yeah, tell me about your visual.
Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to have lunch.
But you see, see, that's the thing. You know, I felt the same way before I did it, but after I did it, I felt so powerful. I'm like, wow, I could actually provide enjoyment and pleasure to a man in a different way. Before, I just thought all I could do was open my mouth or open my vagina, you know, but now I could stick something in there and make them go.
Yeah, what's funny, and what that's kind of reminding me of, it's like when we do really push our boundaries in a safe environment, both sexually and personally, primarily sexually, I think we do have this kind of certain sense of a liberation, if you will. It's like almost like we don't have all that baggage, all the baggage or belief systems that, oh my God, I can't do this or I can't do that. As they kind of fall away, it's like I'm free to have all that energy's freed up to have these new experiences and stuff like that. And it's been fucking remarkable having that experience.
It was, and you know, it taught me so much because for him to receive that, he was so able to relax into it. He has a level of acceptance of his body that I didn't have. You know, like he just accepted his sexuality and his body and my sexuality and my body in a much larger range than I did. I was just like, wow, I can learn from this guy. You know, it was just really amazing how when you get all that crap in my head out of the way, I was able to enjoy it, and I was able to see the beauty of that. And, you know, it was pleasure. Who's to say this pleasure is better than that pleasure, you know, other than my stupid head did?
Yeah, exactly. And you may find, like, yeah, I had that experience a couple times, and I don't necessarily need to go back there again, and that's okay, too.
I kind of liked it.
I
Years later, I recently took the dominatrix training, you know, and in one of them, you know, we get to play role, and we just kind of stumble into a doctor-nurse kind of role-playing experience, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I know how to do that one. I am an expert. Give me some gloves. It's all about power and play.
Yeah, I think the role playing is a great way to do it. Because, I mean, role play, you get an opportunity to kind of live out some real fantasies and really explore, you know, some of those taboos and stuff like that. I think, I'm role play, sign me up.
I see that Stephen is on the line. I'm going to check in to see if he has anything to say. Stephen, do you have anything to add to the conversation?
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Yes. Oh, bad connection here. Let me just move away a bit. Okay. Well, that should be better.
Yeah, much better.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess I didn't know how hot things were going to get because I had questions that would tone it down a bit. What happens when somebody wants a boundary that involves, please don't think of me this way or that way. I don't want you to be too close to me when we actually leave the bed.
Try that one more time. I didn't understand your question.
Okay. When somebody says they don't want you to think of them as a girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, and they put up a bunch of boundaries for how to behave when you're not even in the bed.
Oh, that would fall under the, what, is that emotional boundaries or relationship boundaries or something?
Yeah, yes, but when you already have a pretty hot sexual relationship with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's a really interesting question because I could see it from both sides, right? I could see from them, it's like, well, I just want to have great sex with you. That doesn't mean that I'm anything to you, so don't consider that. That's a really fair request. And at the same time, the other person, I could see how the other person go, well, why not? Why couldn't we? I don't know. What do you guys think, Eric and Annie?
Well, I think I've definitely struggled with that too in the past and present, and I find it's that thing with boundaries. You know, it's constantly communicating what's coming up. Not constantly, like every 5 minutes or couple minutes. It's like when there's a big boundary that needs to be addressed, One versus, okay, we have a sexual relationship versus we're having a romantic relationship where we go out on dates and we do things of that nature. I think it's very important to be clear about what those boundaries are in the beginning. I know a lot of times in the past I've just had these relationships, sexual relationships, and we were never upfront clear about what those boundaries were. And then it got really messy because there was no clear boundaries set to begin with. The older that I get, the more conscious of the boundaries that I do have. I think the better that I get at being able to speak up about those in the beginning, like, hey, this is what I see this relationship now, and then kind of basing it upon that.
I think it's so cute, Eric, watching you talk about this thing, because I can see Eric on Google Plus, and his hair's all disheveled, and he's all like he's like pulling on his hair, talking about sexual boundaries and everything. It's not even his show, you know. It's like you can tell this is a big topic for him.
It is, and it's, you know, and I think Stephen's got, you know, brings up a really good point, and it was a point that I've brought up before too. It's like it can be really challenging. Here you're having a sexual experience with somebody, and you're breaking open all these huge boundaries. And then when you leave that relationship or you leave that situation, even now when I leave this conversation or this phone call, you know, I'm going to be like, oh shit, did I really just come out of the closet and admit that I slept with a man up here on fucking live radio? You know, there's the fear and all that other stuff that comes up later, or just there's so many emotions and stuff that can come up later, and feelings and stuff like that. How does one deal with that? I think that's where hopefully you could have that conversation with the person you're in a relationship with. If not, then speak to your friends or other people that you have, or journal. I love to journal about my experiences and you know, kind of get clarity on what my boundaries are, what I'm experiencing, to better help set my boundaries. But it's not just do it and then just kind of, I think a lot of us I personally get on this automatic pilot, and I just do things without thinking about the repercussions or how they may affect others and things of that. And as I start to become more conscious and aware on a day-to-day basis, the more I'm better able to honor those type of boundaries that people have, and be more honest about it. Like, nope, those aren't boundaries that I feel comfortable being able to hold. So then communicate what I can or can't do, and recognize when they change too.
I can see the difficulties of what Stephen was offering. You know, it's like what you just said there, Eric, is when I look through that lens, I'm thinking, oh, that's just simple boundaries. You know, I have sex with you, and when we're not having hot sex, I am just another acquaintance friend out there. Don't be laying your hands on me. Don't treat me like a girlfriend. It's nothing personal. But the way Stephen said it, I could just see from the person who just had sex with me, the lover in my bed. You know, it's like, don't I mean anything to you? Don't you care about us? Didn't we have something special there? Somehow those things color up the whole. This is just my need out in the world. You know, the simple conversation about boundaries become a very personal conversation about very, oh my gosh, you know, it became personal, and it's become about hurt feelings rather than just hearing each other's boundaries.
Yeah, and I think too what it brings up for me is being.
So Eric, hang on a second, honey.
Sure.
I just got feedback that your sound is kind of fuzzy, so you do need to speak louder and slower so people can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I was going to say that I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
No. Go ahead. I'm sure it'll come back to me.
Okay. You know what? I'm going to take a quick commercial break, and then we'll do. I'll share a tip from Cosmopolitan, and then we'll include the conversation of marriage and to marry or not to marry with Annie in there. Okay?
Okay, great.
Is your marriage or relationship in crisis? Where one partner wants to expand into their sex and bring scary changes to the relationship, while the other partner is dug in, protective, and saying, no way in hell is this going to happen. May knows this place well, and she can help both sides. She is truly amazing. Learn more about her specialty, crisis coaching for couples and individuals, at sexliesandconsciousness.com.
All right. As I was preparing for the show, I Googled sexual boundaries. And one of the things that came up was this article from Cosmopolitan magazine and 14 tips on how to stretch your sexual boundaries. So I wanted to share a couple of the tips for you. And this is what Cosmopolitan is offering. So tip number 14, tie the knot. Take a plain scarf and wrap a long silk scarf. Place it around his main man and the boys. I think they meant his penis and the balls. Tie it in a large square knot, leaving about 1 foot of fabric on either end to hold on to. As you are riding him, pull on the free end so that the knot rubs up against your clitoris. Constricting his penis and scrotum may lead to a harder erection, says Jay Wiseman, the author of Supermarket Tricks, More Than 125 Ways to Improvise Good Sex, which is great news for both of you. So that is Cosmopolitan's offering to you guys on one way to stretch your sexual boundaries, to play with scarf. Seems a little mellow compared to what we've been talking about, don't you think?
Story, yeah.
I'm like,
Ribbon ain't gonna cut it no more, man.
Okay. So, Annie, tell us. Let's bring the boundary thing into your part of the conversation. How old are you, Annie? And tell us a little bit about the expectation of an Indian woman.
Right.
Just when she had to talk, she got dropped off. Google Plus dropped her off. I'll fill in for her. So Annie is, she lives in the Middle East, and she is over 30. That in itself is a big old marker. And she's Indian born. Her Indian parents live in the Middle East, and they have really wanted her to marry and introduce her to all sorts of potential marriages, and till now they still haven't been able to marry her off. So there, Annie, I just fill you in.
Sorry, got killed off, but I think Karma was trying to send a message there. Technology side.
You have to speak really loud because you're going through Google Plus and they can't hear you. Well, good.
Sure. I'm sorry, I don't realize which part of the conversation I got cut out from.
From the beginning, I just told them that you're Indian and you're over 30 and they've been trying to marry you off and they haven't been successful at that.
Yeah, so the typical Indian expectation is post your early 20s, you get married off, so by your mid-20s, you've got your family, your kids, and you're sort of set. And by 40, your kids are out of your hair as well. So it's all planned, it's all staged. Arranged marriages are a very common concept to this date. Although I do feel that it's progressing a lot, however, there are still expectations. So in my typical case, I think my folks, for the first 10 years, were trying to set me up with a series of proposals. Much to their dismay, it took them about 10 years to realize it wasn't working. And it took, and I guess that was probably the more difficult part, because it was very difficult for me to stand up to my family and say, this is not what I want. When you've got 50 people who you look up to and you respect their opinion, you value their judgments, when they're telling you one thing and there's another part of you, whether it's your head, your heart, or your soul, telling you that this is not what you want for yourself,
So is it that you don't want a marriage, or you just didn't like these guys?
I think it was a combination of both, because for one, I find it very interesting how you can set yourself up till death do you bit. When you evolve as a person, you're not the same person you are when you're in your 20s. Your expectations out of yourself and what's around you changes in your 30s. It gets into another level in your 40s. So if you as a person evolve, and if the person with you doesn't evolve with you, I fail to see how this equation works.
So basically, you're like totally against the whole marriage idea. Like, how can two people possibly live together for a whole lifetime when you're so different in your 20s, and then you're so different in your 30s, and your 40s, and 50s, and 60s? Like, how could that possibly work?
And that's one phase of it. And then, if you were to define what you as an individual earn or crave or get along with, it's so difficult, because it's, at some point you need to be with, let's say, an entertainer, somebody who brings a lot of humor at particular stages in your life, when you want somebody who will ground you, and you want to be centered, to somebody who will sort of take charge. There are other scenarios where you want a jock personality so there are all these different combinations. If I could even find it in a single person, wow, fantastic, but I've yet to discover that. But I just find it very
limiting.
Yeah, very inhibiting. It's too controlled. It's too it has too many boundaries.
So if you could do it your way, how would you set it up?
To be honest, I do not have the answer to that, because it's a bit challenging. You have to be your mind has to be open to accept the different combinations.
Yeah.
But I just don't see myself constantly being with the same person all the time. I just don't see it. So it's sort of, there's a particular phase that you're going through in your life. You attract yourself to a particular personality.
Yeah.
And then when you get over that phase, then you realize you don't need that kind of energy in your environment, so you go looking for something else.
Yeah.
What I thought the only way you progress through it is that you don't actually hang on to the emotion or the sentiment or the expectation. So it's what probably the earlier caller was talking about, is you set yourself up into this relationship with certain expectations. You've not clarified it in the beginning, and then when you don't meet those expectations, that's when you have disappointment.
Well, I just realized that we're sitting here talking. I'm talking to both you and Eric, and both of you are beyond the marriage age, appropriately, the appropriate marriage age for each one of you.
Like, downhill from here now, man.
You being Indian, you've already passed way past that age of being married. And Eric, you being, I don't know, American Western man, you're entering 40, so it's like, dude, people are going to start asking the question, how come he hasn't been married yet? What's wrong with him? He's 40, and how come he's not married yet, right? So that's...
I've been asked that question since I was 25.
Yeah, I think it's already crossed that border of what's wrong with you. And I find that so hilarious. Like, how do you determine, or how do you make that assessment that something's wrong with you just because you've not checked box a list that society has created over course of centuries or years? I'm sorry, how do you determine my eligibility in society because I'm not married?
Well, defend yourself. I want to hear, why aren't you both married? What's wrong with you that you're not married yet?
No, because we don't feel the need to have that to define who we are.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that, and I mean, I've been engaged before with a woman that I was very much in love with, but I think one of the biggest challenges about marriage in and of itself is if you have two people that are really wounded approaching a marriage and they haven't worked out their own wounds, it's kind of we're bumping off each other all the time with our wounds. We're constantly hurting each other. And I definitely think in that period in my life that I hadn't dealt with enough of my own issues. And yet at the same time, I don't know that I'm really, anyone that knows me knows that I'm not really, why would I want to join the 51% club? I'm not that excited about it. And what I mean by that is, I think now the divorce rate is over 51%. It's clearly something's not working.
Well, I'm one of those divorcee. I had never planned on being divorced, by the way. I thought it was going to be like a sure thing all the way through, and I worked it all the way through, and now it's like, surprise, surprise, surprise.
And I definitely know people that have been in long-term relationships and that are happy with it. It works for them. And that's great. I'm all for that, and I think it's possible. I just don't know that it's for me.
Well, I know that it's not for you, and I want to make space for you to bring that voice out, because I really think single people don't have enough say on this planet. Still, it's still very swayed toward being married, being couple, have kids, have a job, blah blah blah, and I just don't believe in that either. So that's why I'm like, dude, defend yourself, talk about it, get righteous about it.
Marriage isn't the trend is changing. I remember reading a report recently that there's more single people within their 30s now than any other time in history. Clearly something's changing. And I don't know if it's the instant gratification generation or if it's just all the lies that we've been fed growing up about how wonderful and great it is to force oneself to be in this long-term relationship are just fading away.
Yeah, I love what you just said there. Like, you just stuck in one of those judgment towards single people. I don't know if it's an instant gratification generation. It's like we are so filled with judgment toward people who are single, as if there's something wrong with them that they can't commit. There's something wrong with them that they can't go the long distance, rather than just really love and honor them and give them a tax break, for being single.
Exactly. I'm just not good at lying to myself that long either. It's a really painful experience. I'm a masochist on my own terms, but it's like, come on, at some point.
I also strongly believe that we have a lot more choices than we did, let's say 10 years ago.
Yeah.
People have a lot of choices, so whether it's instant gratification or whatever you call it, if you're not happy in a relationship, honestly, you can go simple online. You can talk to random strangers, you can talk to friends, instantaneous access. It's a very different environment, and people have access to a whole lot of information, so you're not restricted like you were, let's say, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So you're no longer confined by tradition or sticking to the norm. You don't have to do that. And I think there's a very large awakening across generations for age groups and age brackets, saying that, if we don't like it, we don't have to take it.
Yeah.
One thing that keeps coming up for me too, and as I keep discovering more about myself and what it is to be single, because I am single, is that I'm quite okay with being single. When I started to realize that most of the time in previous relationships, I was more in love with the idea of being in a relationship than I was. And I can't say more than I was with the person because I was sincerely in love with them. But yet, because I was in love with them and I was in love with the relationship, I assumed that I'd have to try to force that relationship into marriage. When in fact, no, I can love someone, have really deep love for someone, and that doesn't necessarily mean we're compatible to live together.
Totally. It's I think that's a huge point about being. I think a lot of times people get into couplehoods or marriages to fill a void rather than to find out their own void and to learn to handle their own void. I think they couple up so that they can fill the void, so that they can fill up their insecurity about who they are and what they're responsible for in this lifetime.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not easy, and it's not easy to be alone either. All of our shit comes up.
It's not easy being together either. All our shit come up, Eric.
It's not easy to be alone.
Well, I did do a show on with Ann Betts a couple weeks ago, and it's like we talked about its relationship being a spiritual journey rather than the romantic relationship that we talked about. It's like whatever it is that we want to heal in ourselves, that's why we are with someone or not with someone. And when we see it that way, there's a chance for us to be a bit sane about it. Annie, you're thinking a lot about this. Let's make some room for you.
No, I was thinking on two things. One was my backdoor exit plan, which was
versus my backdoor exit plan.
Well, one was, when everything's good and great, and let's say you've got your health and you've got your, you're self-sufficient.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. You can be self-sufficient. You can be single, but it's sort of, I guess, dependencies on relationships and another party is when things are not that great and when you want something to fall back on. And I'm not talking about financial security. It's even got to do with emotional security. Or, as you're aging, you want to share that space with somebody because you've sort of been there, done that, everything else, and it's that when you get into your 50s and your 60s, you're looking for that private space. And secondly, there was also, I don't know if either of you have seen that movie, Shall We Dance?
Shall We Dance? Yeah.
Yeah. And there's this one line where Susan Sarandon states, which I think was, like, for me, that's like the best definition of a relationship. And she says that she wants Richard Gere, the character in her life, for nothing else but just to witness her life.
Yeah.
It's not giving or taking, but she just wants somebody to know.
Oh God, she just wants somebody to know her deeper, like to have witnessed her life through her history, and that need to be heard and to be seen and to be witnessed is what a relationship means in that movie.
Yeah.
Annie just got dropped from Google Hangout again. What do you think about that, Eric?
Well, what came up to me is, like, I think it's a little funny in the sense that, we require a building to have emergency exits, and yet in a relationship, when we get married, it's like we're supposed to board off all exits and force ourselves to stay in this emergency situation and burn up, even if the house is to catch on fire. It seems really freaking irrational. It's like I can't wrap my head around it.
That's a great metaphor. That's a great metaphor.
It's just me for the moment, but it's weird.
I have to read.
Eric, that's so brilliant because I've always talked about my emergency exit and nobody has come up with that argument yet.
Well, it's so funny. Like, of course, the three of us will be talking together because I have been saying the same thing. There are a couple of things I say. Like, when after my marriage fell apart and I have to, like, learn, like, as an adult, learn how to date and learn how to find couplehood or not, or find myself and find my own singleness, here are some things that I just saw. I'm like, oh, I'm participating in a catch and release system. I should not be keeping anybody, because when I catch and hold and keep and put in my tank, I'm controlling and owning another human being. That's actually not so healthy, But when I tell people, oh, I'm in a catch and release program, people go, oh, you're having committal issues. I'm like, no, actually, I'm really committed. I'm committed to my health and their well-being. That's why I'm not trying to own them. So that's one thing. And that whole thing about, I think so too. I think we should all have an exit plan, because we behave better when there's an exit plan. When we think that we have to be boarded up and locked in for life, we get a little nutty and crazy. We have really bad behavior. It's kind of like cage animal. So I think, yeah, I think exit plans and lots of windows and lots of in and out privileges are really great.
Trap doors.
And I think when you have
feeling.
and when you're committing to someone, I think you should have a renewal of your vow. Every 5 years or 10 years, you should renew your contract. Are we still happy here? Are we still growing with each other? Are we still supporting each other? If we are, and we can see where we're going, then let's go some more. But if not, then let's honestly, renegotiate, create a new contract, or get rid of this one.
Yeah. And I mean, in relationships and marriage or otherwise, I feel like, again, going back to the boundaries thing, it's like being clear on what our boundaries are. And I think in a relationship where marriage is concerned, it's those boundaries start to get, people start having to give up on their boundaries. They start to let them go, because all of a sudden it's like, well, what boundaries can I have? Or I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that. I think it brings on a whole nother level of boundaries that I'm not even aware of, because I've never been married.
Well, I think what I get from you, because I have been married, it's just kind of like whatever individual boundaries I had to give away so that I can merge in with this person. And then together we create a new set of boundaries to keep ourselves in and keep other people out.
That could be a beautiful thing too, if it's done in a healthy way. And I don't know how often that happens.
If you can continue to negotiate and not get anybody's feelings hurt. Annie, you want to say something?
No, I was just saying boundaries and managing expectations are very closely linked.
Yes.
Like when you're most disappointed is when your expectations are not met. However, if you don't have any expectations, then it's okay. Everything goes. It's the difference between conditional love and unconditional love.
Oh, say more about conditional love and unconditional love. Let's take us out with that statement, honey.
Oh, that's a big hat to fill, but no, because I don't know, because I just think expectations are what brings us down, because in our head, in our minds, we create this image. We might not necessarily share that image with whoever we're having that relationship with, and then we're disappointed when they don't meet expectations. And I just always feel it's just disappointment comes from not meeting expectations.
Absolutely. And I think for me, I want to add to that whole unconditional love, which is, I think boundary can serve to access unconditional love. It also can serve to set up very conditional love. And I think negotiation and always being able to talk about it and really be flexible with each other and allowing each other to grow rather than to control and own each other. That to me is on the road toward unconditional love.
Exactly.
So thank you, Eric and Annie, for being here. As I promised, the hour goes by really fast when we talk about sex, lies, and consciousness. Eric, do you want them to get a hold of you? If you do, give them your information.
Sure. It's Eric, E-R-I-C, Roselle, R-O-Z as in zebra, E-L-L @gmail.com.
Great. And Annie, did you want to give them your info? You don't have to.
No, I'm gonna there was a quote you had shared today morning. It's like, I'd like a big slice of life, but I'll hold on the drama, please. I think I'd stay anonymous. I don't want 1 billion people on the Indian population subcontinent coming at me.
You might have a lot of marriage proposal.
Hello, we are trying to avoid the situation.
Oh, I keep forgetting that. Are you sure you don't want to be married? I have a friend I can set you up.
Hey, this conversation will get ugly now.
Don't you just hate that? It's so tiring when people just keep coming at you about that.
No, I find it entertaining at this point in life. Probably not 5 years ago, but I find it entertaining now.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to the show. I work with individuals and couples who are in crisis, as you heard of my commercial. You can find and connect with me on my Facebook fan page, Sex, Lies, and Consciousness. And there's also a website called Sex, Lies, and Consciousness where you can register to join our free membership club right now. The club won't be free for long. We're in the building phase, so we're inviting people to come and join and start participating in the conversation. And soon we'll be locking that up so that we can create a really intimate conversation for all of our members. Next week, I will be on vacation. I'm actually going on a pilgrimage to Medjugorje, which is a little holy town in Bosnia. So I have a special hostess that is going to take my spot. One of our Sex, Lies, and Consciousness coaches, Deb Smouse, who has been on the show before. So she will be running the show next week. So I can't wait to see what she'll do and the kind of guests and conversation they'll be having. Again, thank you for listening to my show, Sex, Lies, and Consciousness, the voice of healthy sex. My ultimate goal is to help us get a hold of our sex, own it, play with it, and let it serve us. Enjoy your week, everyone, and I'll talk to you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Do you want more sex, lies, and consciousness? Access our archives at sexliesandconsciousness.com. While you're there, please leave your comments or suggestions for the show and participate in current SLC conversations with other listeners worldwide.